How about working with Lex Luger? You're talking about top wrestlers.
Lex Luger. Lex, I started more or less the same time with Lex in Florida.
Right.
And one night, about I guess it was a little over a year ago, I went to a Thunder and saw my name was Norman Smiley versus Lex Luger. Oh Jesus, this is going to be everything that he wants to do, you know. Because I know that Lex can be difficult at times. With me, he's always been very nice and courteous. You know, we say hello. And to my surprise, the night that I went to his locker room, because he was getting changed in a different room, and went over to him, and basically in the back of my mind thinking, this guy's not going to do shit.
Right.
I'm just, Norman's going to be this, and I'm going to wreck you. Basically asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, no, Lex, what do you want to do? Because, I knew that I could adapt easier to his style than he could to mine. So, he said, no, whatever you want to do. So, I called a couple of spots and everything. All the time thinking, when can I squeeze the wiggle in there? And I just said to Lex, okay, if I can give you that scoop slam I do and get it, brother, whatever you want. I was like, and Buff was getting changed next to him, and Buff was like, even Buff gave him the glance. And I was like, wow, you know what I mean? And to my surprise, he did it. He was a professional in the ring. Everything he said he would do, he did. And in fact, I was just on tour in Australia with Buff, and we were talking. He told me that Sting called him and asked him who gave the okay for Norman Smiley to do the wiggle on Lex, because he said he watched it and he thought it was the funniest thing, because he knows the way Lex is.
Right.
So he just thought it was the most hilarious thing that he's ever seen. Lex just draped over there and taking it in the ass.
What about Ernest Miller? What would you like to work with?
Ernest was coming from a shooting environment where this karate is very hard at times to make that transition into a worker, because sometimes you're stiff in the ring and it's very hard to maneuver you around. But Ernest has to be, I would say, the funniest guy I have ever met. He can see anybody or anything or a story, an incident that happened, and just make a joke out of it. He's very outspoken. He came a long way in a short time. A lot of guys pointed to Eric Bischoff, the relationship that he had with Eric Bischoff, which may have been the case to initially get his foot inside the door, but people held friends, and him and Eric were friends. But Eric Bischoff wasn't behind the charisma that the cat had. He wasn't behind the way he stood up for himself. And I think he came a long way. And I was very, very shocked and surprised that he wasn't one of the first group of guys that was mentioned as being the stars that Vince McMahon wanted to pick up. In fact, really, since the company folded to this day, you've never heard about Ernest Miller. And I think that he's a star in the making. He's a huge star.
What about Haku and Ming? You worked with him.
Haku, killer.
Tough guy.
Yeah. But you know what? He's a gentleman, and I've had to fight him many times because he's got a heart of gold, and he's generous as hell. And you have to fight him because he wants to pick up every check. You go out to eat with him, or have a drink or whatever. But he has a heart of gold. I've known him for years. I initially met him while I was in New Zealand. I was doing a tour there, and he was there. And at that time, you hear him, pulling out guys' hearts and making them eat it. So I was like, I don't even want to talk to him because I don't want to get on the wrong side of him. But once you got to know him, he's a sweetheart of a man. He's a family man. He lives in Orlando, and he's a great guy. And it's good to have a guy like him in the locker room.
Did any wrestlers ever refuse to work with you because they thought your gimmick was too much comedy, and they say, "Oh, I don't want to work with you"?
No. I've had a couple of guys who didn't want to do an agreed upon finish because they thought it was stupid. But
right.
But just outright disagreeing to work with me, to my knowledge, no.
Do you think Hoovy got a Raw deal over in Australia? You think he should have just been brought back?
Hoovy, I spent more time babysitting Hoovy for 4 years, and Hoovy didn't know what he had at that time,
right.
And I'm a few years older than Hoovy, and I spent some time in Mexico where I did well, the same exposure and the same recognition that Hoovy was getting here. I had already experienced that in Mexico, making money and so on and so forth. And I would tell Hoovy, you don't realize how easy you have it. You've got a job here where you're making well into six figures a year, and all the company wants us to do is to be in the building at 2:00. We can eat, there's food there, you can get on the phone, there's a TV there, you can sit in the parking lot, you can talk, you can run around a bit, whatever you want to do, but just be in the building at 2:00. If Hoovie's life depended, he could never show up on time. You know, he always had an excuse to, I didn't know it was his building, baby. Like, you know, so has he done?
No, we know him. Yeah,
so
we did one.
He didn't show up on time, did he?
No, we hung out the whole weekend. It was in Puerto Rico, so he was with us, so we didn't have to worry about it.
But you know,
I wanted to go shopping instead of doing the interview for 2 days.
That's Juice.
Like, we'll do it tomorrow. We'll go
I could tell you stories about Juice where So Forgetful wasted so much money. He'd go out and buy a $300 pair of sunglasses and lose them the same day. You know, jackets. I remember one time he went to a GNC in Charlotte. He bought $400 worth of creatine and a Myoplex. And you got these 2 big bags, right? You got 2 big bags. Takes him back to the hotel room. You know, I'm not concerned with him. I'm just concerned with my shit. So I pack up my bags and everything. We're driving to the next town. We're like an hour away from the town after driving for 2 hours. He says, "Oh no!" I said, "What happened?" I forgot all the stuff in the hotel room. Hoovie, how can you know 2 big bags? But anyway, Hoovie, I would explain to him that you know you got to be more appreciative of what you have. And there were myself, Conan, Rey Mysterio, and Psychosis. We would babysit him, literally babysit him. And after hanging out with him for 2 days in Puerto Rico, I know you know he likes to have a good time. He likes to go out and party, and that was his downfall. You know, it was one of those things where he was given a lot of chances. You know, he would often change his tickets flying in from Mexico. If we had a shot in Toronto, you know, he'd change his ticket. And you know, you're talking about flying from Mexico City to Houston, from Houston to Chicago, Chicago to Toronto. So if something happens, you miss one of those flights, you missed a shot. And Hoovie would take it upon himself to change his tickets. So he had a lot of heat with the agents and the office, and a lot of times they thought it was some kind of because the guys were racist, but a lot of the heat, you know, Hoovie brought upon himself.
I was going to ask you about racism in WCW. What are your thoughts on that?
It existed. It existed. I've heard guys who wasn't aware that I was in the vicinity use the word nigger. You could also tell that just by the way the card was done, that you know the black guys were kept down. The Mexican guys were cut down to a certain degree. I had a conversation one time with Pez Watley, who told me that for years that he was trying to get a job as an agent, and you know, and for some reason I'd never thought of him in that light because he was never around those guys, and he was telling me no, because these guys are racist. And it explained to me, because Norman, I've got 24 years in the business. I've been in it just as long as Terry Taylor, just as long, if not more, as Aaron, Kevin Sullivan. And when you sit back and think about that, I mean, he had a valid point. Why wasn't he at least given a chance? You had certain guys that were involved in those booking meetings that had no wrestling experience whatsoever. But still, you had a guy like Pistol Pez Watley, who was wrestling in all the territories. He told me stories that he started with Macho Man when they used to drive in the back of a truck together. So he paid his dues. He knew what was a successful chemistry for a guy to get over, but was never given a chance. And now I'm not sure what the situation is now, but now they have a pending lawsuit against Time Warner.
Did they ever ask you to get involved with that lawsuit or no?
Ironically, the guys that were involved in the suit were all released,
right?
You know, and I still have my job at that time, and I didn't think it was in my best interest if I was to get involved in the suit, still being employed. So,
what were your thoughts? Go ahead.
So no, I didn't. I wasn't involved in it.
Okay.
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.